Okay. Okay. So I thought it might be good for us after that pretty incredible morning session we had. I would like to revisit some of the questions and comments we had heard from last night because there were some uh, pretty important thoughts that were brought up afterwards or privately to us that maybe some of you also were thinking about or wondering about. Actually, I just got another message over lunch from someone that wasn't here today asking similar questions too. Um, had a discussion at breakfast about it. So I think we touched on something pretty important as well as sensitive when we talk about trust, and especially the way we described it last night. Because for many people, not only is what we talked or how we talked about trust last night different, it's also downright dangerous. And I want you all to know that we are not unaware that our definition that we talked about last night, we're not unaware that it's dangerous. We are very aware. In fact, painfully aware that walking in the level of trust and the kind of trust that we talked about last night is painful. And it will result in loss. It will result in betrayal. It will result in investment being exploited and taken, just like the prodigal son. So um, I thought it might be good before we actually, launched into what we had heard. Is there anyone that had a question about it or was? I want you to know, guys, this is a place where you can share. Hey, I didn't really see it the way you guys were saying it, or I really wasn't feeling this, or what you did say made me feel this way. I want you guys to feel free to be able to share that here, because this is family. Okay. I, I won't go as far to say this is not church. I will go as far to say that our goal is to make church what it was always intended to be, which was a discussion, which is us talking from our hearts where we might not always agree, but we're seeking to learn. I was just talking with Christian after lunch here today. He goes, I've come here to learn. And I'm so thankful that we have a group of people that are willing to come, even though they're knowledgeable and seasoned in the ministry or in the kingdom, that we can still come with a beginner's mind. And I think that is one of the greatest gifts we can bring to any person or a situation even like this. Even though we have lots of information and lots of experience we can share with one another, we can still come with a beginner's mind. I want to tell you, I know for myself personally, I've come here to learn. I've come here to learn from you and of you about the Lord and of Him. So I am not here to teach or to tell you. I'm here to experience the Lord with you. And it could very well come from you, So please don't hide your thought, or don't think, oh, no one else has said this, so it couldn't possibly be right. No, no one else has said it because you haven't said it yet. That's the only reason. So, does anybody want to start us off on what we were talking about last night?
Well, we talked after the first session, and one of the comments that came up was, say you say something and nobody responds, and you think you get a nothing, not to go there, because it's not always used that way. And so not to take on anything negative if you don't get the response when you say something.
About the whole topic of trust, I think conversations I've had after is, how do you trust somebody when you know that they're not trustworthy? Like, they've proven time and time again that you can't trust them. How do you continue to still trust?
I looked over and said, let's see him answer this one. that Journeyac. So I completely off an unprepared mind. I think what happens a lot of times is we when we say we're going to trust somebody, we're saying we're going to trust them and we're going to walk away. Right? Here, I trust you with this, and now I'm going to walk away. And if you truly want to start trusting someone who hasn't presented themselves as trustworthy, you need to put the thing in their hand and then walk with them. And I'm going to steal somebody's analogy here. I don't remember who said it, but when you first teach your children how to drive, you give them the keys, and then you sit in the passenger seat and you give them direction. You don't give them the keys, and you pray, but that's a good point. You don't give them the keys and then like sit on the couch and say, oh, you know what? I trust that everything's going to be fine. No, like, let's use wisdom here too. We're not telling you to trust and not use wisdom. Don't hear that. If you're hearing that, then you're going down the wrong path. What we're telling you is to put something in someone's hand and walk it out with them. Like, walk it out in a way that they'll be with you side by side. They would hear your heart and understand your heart for that thing. And I guarantee that when you do that, and they're actually side by side and your heart is starting to connect, you will see that thing flourish in their hands because you walk side by side. So don't get this idea that we're saying trust and walk away. We're saying the exact opposite. We're saying trust so that you can stay connected and open your heart. Can I have more?
To what he said, I think if you can, like in those situations when you know there are some issues and maybe, you know, trust is something you're going to have a lot of wisdom with. Look at trust as a seed you're sowing this seed into that person. I'm going to sow some trust in you, but you don't just throw a seed out and let it die. Like he said, you walk with it. You work, you know, you nurture it, you water it, you do the things, because the point is not to trust that person. The point is to draw them to the Lord. The point is to bring them into their sonship. And so if we can view trust as a seed that has to be nurtured and it has to be grown and it has to be cared for, you know, if you can understand that analogy.
You know what? That's a picture of what it says in Philippians, where it says, don't put any confidence in the flesh. So what people will automatically jump to is, don't put your confidence in a person. But that's not what it's saying. It's saying, don't put your confidence in that person's flesh. Get to that root of that person. And if you're able to get to that root of that person, and I'm telling you, you can do it if you walk side by side, you won't need to have confidence in the flesh. You'll have full confidence in the spirit man that's in that person.
And maybe I'll answer a little more directly your question about the person that's, displayed a lack of trust repeatedly. It's not bad to have a conversation about it
That's true. That's good.
and just say, not like regurgitate all the things that happen, but have a conversation with them about the areas that were this distrust was displayed over and over, and tell them, I still choose to trust you. And that in itself, I've done this. That in itself, kind of, they open their eyes like, are you stupid? Because they may or may not know that they did those things. Because a lot of times, if something happens to us, what do we naturally do? We pull back from the person. And they don't have any idea half the time or more than half the time that they've done it, because we've extracted ourselves from the relationship, because we were hurt, because we were wounded. They said something or didn't say something, or, didn't invite you or whatever. And something was broken. Some level of trust was broken. And a lot of times they don't even know it. And it could be something inside us that's being, dug on by the Holy Spirit. This is an issue in you. And if you go through life, you leave this church and you go to this church, the same thing happens. You leave that church, it goes to, on and on and on. There's something wrong inside of you. Normally. It's like you talking about the first time you came back from Ukraine and you started in front of the body repenting of all the judgments that you had. Even though you never verbalized it to anybody, they knew you had a judgment against them. People with money and all the things that you told. That released that judgment. And so it's not bad to have that level of conversation. And that alone set your people's heart towards you that you had a judgment against. So you had broken trust with them, and they didn't even know why. You'd never verbalized it to them, even though you were the offender, right? And I've done this too. And you repented to them. You didn't say for breaking trust with you, but for having a judgment against you. And so what that did was, even though they took themselves out of the relationship, the offender actually got dealt with by the Holy Spirit and said, please forgive me for my judgment. And it brought them back into relationship with you because the judgment was gone. So it's the same thing with trust. Again, if you tell them, I still choose to trust you, I love you, that kind of tells them, even if you hurt me again, I'm still going to trust, because this is who I am. I choose to love. I choose to trust. And you're verbalizing to them, I'm calling you, without even saying it, I'm calling you to a higher place in relationship with me. And it also opens up the possibility of even them repenting to you for the things that they weren't even aware of that we'd have a tendency to do.
Yeah, and in a practical sense, if you plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple tree, and you're going to get apples. So if you plant mistrust, you're going to get mistrust. So the thing that you plant and the thing that you seed, and we've talked about it plenty of times, the things that you seed is the thing that you're going to reap. Like, you're going to get that. So if you can get beyond yourself, and that's what it is. I think a lot of times people break our trust because they're really just breaking our expectations of what they should do. Like, a lot of times we never even set those expectations in the first place. It was just these things that you expected people to do, and you never had a conversation about that, right? And so now, if you're able to get past yourself in that and seed trust and plant trust, you're going to grow trust. And that's just the nature of how the Father created it.
Yeah, there's this mystery verse that Jesus talks about. Most of us know it, but I'm not sure how many of us actually know how to live it. When he says, I want you to walk in the earth wise as serpents, but innocent as doves. And we find it a lot easier to be one or the other. Like, I can do the innocent as doves thing and just get walked all over, or I can do the wise as serpent and no one's going to mess with me. But it's really hard, and it's a challenge to walk as both. But he specifically listed them together and said you have to walk as both. And I believe that this trusting subject is a perfect illustration to your question, Natasha, about being innocent and wise at the same time. And so for me, the innocence is to see them new every morning, just like the Lord does. Like every morning I wake up, he gives me new mercies. I mean, I think the Lord has a really bad memory on purpose. He does. And the vision I had of the Lord last spring, I can promise you, I saw his halls of memory, and they're constantly washed in his son's blood. So I know he has a bad memory because he's chosen to. But I also know that he's also very wise with me. He doesn't just hand me everything and say, hey, do what you want. Talk to you later. And so Diane Sims and I were having a conversation with Dawn this morning, and she was asking this question. And she goes, is there a different word than trust that we can use here? And at first I'm thinking she's just trying to skirt the issue. And then I realized, no, she's actually trying to delineate innocence from wisdom. She's trying to help, because we need to walk in both, guys. If there should be every person in this room that this is a relevant question about. Because every one of us has trusted and it has really gone bad. Every one of us. And so as we were talking more, she actually got to the place, well, could it be trust and entrust, or entrust, right? Entrust. So we keep our heart open to people. I think if you ask me, there is no greater way of walking as a son than to walk with the same heart the Father has for people. And his heart is always open to people. I think that's the innocent part of walking as the dove. But then there's a wisdom part that goes along with it, that he doesn't, like I use it, it was me that, because I'm very fresh right now sitting in the passenger seat as Megan drives me around. And I remember the first time I gave her the key and I got in the passenger seat, and you want to talk about insecure. There's no steering wheel. There's no brake pedal in front of me. There's nothing. There's just my relationship with this girl. By then, trust is broken. And my nose. So I recognized that Megan had been showing me that she was trustworthy, but never with driving. She had been showing me in other areas of her life. The way she carried herself, the way she handled other responsibilities I gave her, to the point where it wasn't just that she turned 16, it was time to give her a key. How many people know? Some people are 30 and not sure they're ready for a key. But I saw other areas of her life where she said, Dad, I'm ready for this. So I never actually saw her drive when I gave her the key. This is really big. That's the innocent part coming in. But the wisdom was, I saw other areas of her life where I'm like, oh, okay. How she handled it here, how she handled life here, how she handled that decision here, shows me that when I hand her this key, she'll walk likewise. But I don't just, 7 years old, hey, come here, I need a ride, I'm tired of driving. Because we know that they haven't shown in other areas of their life similar, that they're going to take me where I need to go without running me into a pole. So I think Diane brought it up well. I keep my heart open. My mercies are new every morning to you. I'm ready to walk in brand new, fresh relationship with you at any moment. But you will earn the key. Back to that Matthew 16. Who do you say that I am? I don't think he would have said, Peter, here's the key, if Peter would have said, I really think you're Jeremiah. That's who I think you are. Okay, not yet. But when he said, you're the son, my dad's been talking to you. No one else could show you that but Dad. There you go. So I think there's an innocent and a wise thing that when they walk together, then we know the difference between trust and entrusting. Okay? I think the Father fully trusted us with his heart. But as we walk in his heart, he begins to entrust us with the kingdom. Do you guys see that? We begin to see a difference.
That entrusting also comes in levels too. It's like when he sent the disciples out, I give you all power and all authority, and he sent them out with no instruction. He knew they were coming back. And even though some of them did wisely and some of them did poorly, that's the walking with. And it's not like, here's all the authority in the kingdom, now don't screw it up. And then he leaves. So he's staying in constant relationship with them. And there were many times where he go like, guys, you're operating in jealousy and murder and all, you don't know what spirits you're operating in. Right. But he never took them back, was the thing. Even though they completely messed up at times, he never took it back. Go, you've disqualified yourself. Give me everything back because you're idiots. You know, that only can come by the Holy Spirit, where you have that level of trust that you can keep on doing even after somebody betrays your trust. And he's like spent years with them and they're, you know, thinking about murder and all this other stuff. Come on, you know, but he still loved him through it.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's you have to separate at some point the trust in the relationship and the trust in everything else, because it's not the same thing. Like, to me, trusting means I never lose faith in who you are, who you can become, everything that you have. That's the main thing, is like this road. But then the other thing is, if it doesn't come through trust, it comes through strife. It comes through a bunch of bad things. So like, and I say this about my relationship with the Lord, but it's also with other people. So I trust him. I really trust you. You said you gave me the kingdom. You said you gave me all these things. I trust you. Does he give it to me right away? No. Why? It's not because he doesn't trust me. My trust needs to be put to the test. So I'm waiting. Nothing shows up. Okay, so you're lying to me. I don't trust you now. And then, so maybe you don't want to give it to me. Or maybe you gave it to him, but I'm like second class. What's happening here? So my trust needs to go through all these stages of being tested. If it doesn't come through trust, and that's why he allows these moments of things not happening and us not receiving and not seeing things, because our trust needs to grow, because he doesn't want those things to come through anything else than pure trust. So the relationship becomes the main thing. It's just me and like walking with. That is the thing, not what I can get. And that's where I see this confusion here, is like, I trust you. Does that mean I have to give you everything? Of course not. Absolutely not. Actually, no. Don't do that, because then I'm teaching you to be demanding, impatient, and all those things, and to walk in something you're not ready to carry, and all those things that are just not, I mean, maturity is maturity. This is not, and you know, the wisdom is wisdom. I don't have to give you everything because I trust you. That is ridiculous. I don't understand the question, because to me it's like so clear. Trust doesn't mean I just, okay, here's the keys to my car, to my house, that's not what trust to me. But
The reason why it's very clear to some, and because me included, have defined trust is, oh, your car, your money. As a result of that, you trust me, because you wouldn't give me that if you didn't trust me. That's how most of us have learned what the definition of trust is. But you're absolutely right. That's a more biblical view of trust, which is, no, man, I'll never lose faith in you.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
is this thing that is basing trust on what I'm getting is actually, you're reducing and limiting trust. And that's what the Lord told me. Is like, when I was talking about my calling the whole time, he said, okay, this is what I want to give you. You're focused on this, and you're seeing me and my relationship through this tiny little keyhole, and everything else you're missing because you're obsessing with one thing. Now, trade that for husband, finances, whatever it is that you think, oh, you don't trust me because you don't want to give me this. And so he told me, if it doesn't come through trust, you will never discover how much you can have. So to me, trust is what opens up our perspective to everything we can receive. It's actually the opposite. But when we make it about the things we get, oh, he trusts me because like Mark was saying, then that actually limits it. It's actually cheapening trust. That's not trust.
Well, it's back to what we started out, I think, is earned-based trust. And so that's why I think some of us are having a hard time in the paradigm shift of what we're talking about, because we've so associated it with, you have to earn my trust. And then it goes to things, and it goes to possessions. And
Well, and I think, personally in my own life, I've been told that I was trusted. And then you find out in the process, they just trusted you to do whatever they thought needed to happen. When I think really the question I was asking them is, will you entrust this to me? Or will you entrust yourself to me? Can you trust in that way, can you trust my heart? And so it has to happen in relationship, obviously. And To trust someone that you don't have trust in means you're trying to trust someone you don't have a relationship with. You know, you get what I'm saying in that regard. You know, I mean, I might call up a company and dealing with their customer service, and I have to entrust things to them without a relationship. That's different. You know, there's some things you can't control, but in relationship with one another, obviously there are things we can't control. And so to be harmless as doves and wise as serpents, you know, I think that's a key verse, Mark.
So I have kind of a side question related to the whole trust thing. I've been finding recently that I tend to, like when something disappointing or painful comes up, either I'm in the moment and, you know, I have some responsibility or something, so I feel like I can't deal with that pain or disappointment completely in the moment, so I kind of push it off to the side and move on with whatever I'm doing. And the kind of intent is like, okay, I need to take care of this thing right now. I'll like come and process through this later. And then months down the road, I mean, literally just like a couple of weeks ago, I found myself in this place where I was feeling disconnected from I mean, just about everybody. Like I really didn't feel connected to many people at all. And the Lord showed me, He's like, well, you're not processing pain like at all. Like you're trying to be strong for people. You're trying to you know, take care of these responsibilities, this, that, and the other thing. And you're like, I mean, you're really not being fair to yourself. And so it's like interesting seeing that, like not letting it hurt the way it should actually led to disconnection for me. Like a lot of times the hurt can be what leads us to draw back. But it was for me, like the not letting it hurt led to this other like really weird thing later down the road. So like I'd actually really appreciate some feedback on, and so since discovering that, you know, I've given time, like I've spent entire days with the Lord, just like, okay, like take me through this. Like you know, I hear what you're saying, like do what you need to do. And it feels, first of all, really slow. Like I feel like, okay, I'm here, like, and you told me that I need to address this thing. So like, can we deal with this so that I can be healthy and move on? So that's kind of actually where I'm at right now. So I would like some feedback on both, you know, kind of processing through that and creating just a more healthy process for like dealing with that stuff in the moment, because I feel like that's what the Lord's leading me to, but I'm kind of having trouble getting there.
I want to go back to touch on what Gabby said about trusting. We don't trust blindly, and that boundaries are a good thing. You know, and we trust a point. It's like it's the goodness of God that leads us to repentance. So if we are extending, you know, Jesus through that and walking with people, we're extending that goodness. It's them that's making the decision. It's not us. If we take on guilt and whatever for cutting somebody off, or we think we're making the decision. If we are walking with the Father's heart and walking beside somebody, we walk at a different spot with a whole bunch of different people. They're the ones that are actually making the decision. You are walking out with the Father's heart, and they're deciding already the level that they're going to walk with you. So it's not compelling that you can't, you know, take that on yourself. You know, you're offering everything you have. I offer everything to you. You are making the decision how far you want to come in. I'm saying all of me is here.
Yeah, the trust is not obligated to respond to manipulation, demanding stuff. That is actually the opposite of trust. So why should I respond to that when I'm saying I'm walking in trust? I want to walk in trust with you. It's this level here. And you insist on walking here. There's nothing we can do. I mean,
Right.
unless you decide to come up to that level of trust, and then your openness, my openness, they meet. And, you know, if this is my level of trust, let's say it's about half an inch, and God's level of trust is, you know, X million miles infinite, how much do you think I would get? It's based on my openness, not him. But then I try to open all these other paths, manipulation, whatever. What you're saying is a perfect example. Who was it you? You moved. It's actually, oh, that perfect example that you just said about your pain. And what the Lord is probably telling you is what he told me. I said, okay, Lord, just fix me so I can just walk with you. And he's like, no, I want you to walk with me broken, because it's easy to trust me when you're healed. But when you're hurting, you know, then you say, no, heal me and I'll trust you. That's what you're saying. He says, no, trust me and I'll heal you. It's more like the opposite. And that's exactly what we're talking about here is like, I trust, therefore I am not obligated to respond to the flesh. That's the same thing you were saying, is like, we have no obligation to the flesh to walk according to the flesh. So if it doesn't come in that level of spiritual trust, I don't have to respond to that. And you can tell me, oh, you're being a jerk, or you're being greedy, or whatever. You don't trust me. You don't want to give me. No, I trust you. That's exactly why I am not responding to this.
Yeah.
And that's not boundaries. That is boundaries, but it's not the same thing. It's just that I'm walking here and you want to take me somewhere else, and I don't want to go there.
Yeah. You want to respond to that? Because
I just wanted to add a quick thing to it. I mean, I think Lauren said it yesterday, but I mean, Jesus said, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And it doesn't say, blessed are those who are strong, they will be comforted. So what he was saying exactly about walking with him in your brokenness, like, allow yourself the mourning time so you could get to the comforting time, but allow yourself that time. Like, you don't have to sit there and be like, I need to be strong about this thing. He's not asking you to do that. I mean, Jesus said it right there. He's not asking you to do that. So as long as we want to maintain, and honestly, that strength is just arrogance. Like, that strength the strength that you use for yourself to get you to process through something is arrogant. All right. What's not arrogant is that time where you're going to say, like, my heart is broken. I'm going to mourn this thing, but we're going to have comfort at the end. So don't walk in arrogance and say my strength is going to carry me through this thing, because it won't. It'll break down easily. And months later, like you said, oh, I'm back to this place, right? And my strength only carried me this far, but it carried me in a circle back to the same spot.
I'm going to give you an example of something that happened to me years ago in our spirit school. I think you were with me when this happened in Ukraine. I got really sick. It was in January, and I developed pneumonia. And so I went to the doctor, and I had x-rays, and it looked like, I got shot in the lung. My lung just like exploded inside. He's like, you go to bed, you get up in, 10 days. He's like, you stay in your apartment, don't shower, or you could die. I mean, it was like one of those things. So of course, 2 days later, I'm back out in our spirit school, doing stuff. And I'm like delusional. My head is spinning, and I'm just like, what in the world? I got all these people depending on me. We flew over here, blah, 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 all this, just junk. And so I'm standing there, and I'm pleading with the Lord. Please heal me. I can't even think. I can't function. I can't do anything. I'm manipulating. That's what I'm doing. So that's what I'm saying. And nothing, silence. Again, I asked the Lord, and I'm pleading. I can't do anything. I'm just like, my head is just going to blow up. I could die here. So the third time I asked the Lord, you're all mature believers, I'll challenge your doctrine a little bit. That's all right. Third time, the Lord spoke to me. It was almost audibly. He said, I'm not going to heal you. Don't ask again. I went, whoa. And I knew he still trusted me, but he was like, you need to just be quiet, sit down, and shut up. And don't keep trying to manipulate me to heal you so that you can minister. He's like, do you think I need you to minister for all these people to be healed and all this other stuff? I don't need you. I mean, he was talking rough to me because I was trying to manipulate him into healing me. Yeah, that's what it takes of me. That's this kind of relationship I have with the Lord is kind of adversarial sometimes, you know. But that's true. That's what he's saying is so true. And you know, I could have been offended by the Lord, but no, that sternness really brought a lot of comfort to me when he started speaking just straight to me. And I sat down and this thing just washed over me. I wasn't healed at all. And I knew he wasn't going to heal me. And I was fine with it. I didn't start claiming scriptures and all this garbage. No, I just sat down there and just, you know, coughed up blood.
Great. Get to launch off a coughing up blood.
No, I mean, he talked straight.
No, I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying. We all do. Trust me.
I trust.
I want to go back to Spencer because Spencer asked for feedback on that. And I think a lot of other people have the same question. And someone said this last night. I don't remember who it was. It was Gabby or Ben or somebody. But you don't really live unless you experience both pleasure and pain. There really is no life in just pleasure. I know it sounds great. It's that utopian experience we all want of life. But I can promise you, you'll never really live unless you also experience pain. And I was having this conversation with the Lord about a month ago. I was driving. And I told him I was kind of a little tired of pain. I was just honest with him. And I don't think I was trying to manipulate him. I was just being honest with him. And then he replied to me with this simple thing. And I remember, and I wrote this while I was driving on my phone. The same grace that it takes to handle pain is the grace that also takes to handle pleasure. Because many times we think if we have pleasure, we don't need grace. And I can promise you that when pleasure comes, if you're not walking in grace, you'll make it an idol. But the same grace that I can handle pain with, I handle pleasure with. And all of a sudden, the Lord opened my eyes and he showed me all the time people rejected me. And I was like, you know what? I have all the grace in the world for when people give me accolades and people tell me how great I am. But as soon as someone rejects me, I'm out. All of a sudden, I realize, and I say that I'm walking in grace. I'm not really walking in grace if I can't handle both. And so now I realize that it's really not about avoiding pain. But so many of us live our lives to avoid pain. Come on. I know one of the things I heard when I first became a Christian, if you're in pain, it's one of the signs that something is wrong. I remember people teaching me that. And for the longest time, I'm like, I'm losing money, or someone's mad at me, or things aren't going well, so God, I must be out of God's will. Anybody else? I remember that. That is manipulation. That is a manipulative lifestyle. That if I'm walking in blessing, then God's with me. That's actually God manipulating us. We actually have the mindset that God will manipulate us with blessing. Think about it. The only way we have favor from the Lord is if he blesses us. No wonder we manipulate the Lord and each other. We think that's how he operates with us. Oh, if I bless Diane enough, then she'll start to really do what I want her to do. Come on. I know we don't want to think that that's how we think about God, but many times that is exactly how we motivate one another. I remember telling someone recently, look, I love you, I believe in you, but I do not agree with what you're doing. And because they couldn't separate the two, fellowship was broken. Has anybody ever had that happen? You can still love someone completely, know their heart, see them, and not agree. And you should still be able to walk in full, open-hearted fellowship. But the problem is, as soon as that discord takes place, we bolt. Because we don't have grace for both pain and pleasure. And I promise you guys, if we don't have grace in the pleasure, it will become an idol. We'll always want it. We'll always want to have this spiritual vacation all the time with the Lord. Hallelujah. Angels singing on clouds and all this kind of stuff. And then when we're going through no grace. You got to have it in both or you don't have it at all.
Well, and I think the difference is, the difference though with the pleasure and the pain part is that the grace is more manifest in the pain. You know, I mean, Paul talks about that, right? 3 times I cried out to the Lord to remove this thorn in my flesh. And he's like, no, I'm not going to remove it. I'll give you strength through it. You'll be able to walk through it. But as you were talking, I kept thinking, in doing inner healing ministry, you understand this. Whatever you don't process, you will manifest somewhere on someone. And it may just be on yourself somewhere down the road. I think personally, it usually shows up as depression or, different things like that, or some kind of a disorder you go through, or you're just going to manifest all over somebody else who had nothing to do with it, plain and simple. And these are all things we're learning in life, and a lot of it goes back to the trust issues. We trusted someone who broke our trust. I mean, I cannot tell you the pain I used to go through on Mother's Day every year because of what my mother did and how she left us. And it was like, I struggled just to celebrate my wife on that day. And because of that, and until I dealt with that and truly processed it, now I can go and I can talk about it, and it doesn't, all this junk doesn't start crawling up out of me. And, I don't have to go hide and have a retreat or anything like that. I don't have to go to a conference now to deal with it. We've got to learn how to process this stuff. And sometimes that means, trusting somebody else to walk with us through it. And that's okay. But yeah, you definitely learn how to do that, because and really, I think it would be helpful if we learned how to do that before we ever tried to speak to somebody else about it. That we take the time with the Lord. I think most of the time we don't stop long enough for ourselves, and we just react to everything around us, and instead of respond with the Lord in your own life. But for you and you personally, and for anybody else in the room, this may be a struggle for. Deal with it. I get it. I'm a pastor. I'm supposed to be strong, right? There's got to be places where I can cry. There's got to be places where I can deal with things. There's got to be places where I can just be raw and real. Have those relationships in your life. I sent a happy birthday thing to a friend of mine today, and he turns 40 years old. I wish I knew he was watching. I'd make fun of him. I'm still older than him, but it's hard for him to make this change. And I just said, man, I'm just grateful to have you in my life. Thanks for being such a friend. And Mark and Randy's met this guy. They would appreciate this. And he said, well, I think you got the short end of the stick in this relationship. And I said, Chris, you know what I love about my relationship with you? I said, I never have to wonder where I stand with you. And you need people in your life that if you're struggling to process stuff by yourself, at least you can sit down and say, all right, I'm just going to be real with you, Randy. This is what I'm going through. It hurts like hell, but this is what I'm going through. And you need people like that, because whatever you don't process, you will manifest somewhere down in your life. Okay? So it's okay.
Yeah, and
It really is okay. And the Lord's right there going, I'm right here with you. Let's go ahead and process it. Much easier then than down the road, right? Okay.
like what you said was really good, that you didn't let it hurt as it should. And really what really damages is not the pain, is how we respond to pain. Because pain is like any other thing, it's just a thing. It's like, I don't know, dynamite. You can use it really well or you can use it really bad. So it either breaks you or, I don't know, it kills you, kills everything. So it's really a powerful thing. And that's why, Jesus, he was experienced in suffering, which is not the same as he was hurting all the time. That's not what we're saying. And because if you understand that the pain of love actually opens a way for the joy of love, it's like carving through your heart and creating paths so you can actually be more alive, not less alive. It's not killing, it's bringing more life, but it hurts. Now, if you don't know how to handle your pain, you will always, like Neil just said, you'll just react and respond. And you will think that is the proper way because you think it's happening, so it must be right. Well, no. And sometimes it's the opposite. I mean, you really have to let the Lord lead you and understand, what do I do with this pain? And stop trying to control it and stop trying to do whatever the world does with it, or whatever. People take drugs or they drink or whatever. And sometimes the Lord might tell you, okay, get a painkiller. Or sometimes he'll tell you, you know what, don't go through that pain, give it to me. Or sometimes he'll say, sorry, it has to hurt. Just don't make formulas, because I read a lot of stuff, and I read a lot of stuff on Facebook and stuff, and it works for one person and it doesn't work for the other person. You don't know what to do with your pain. Just ask him. Don't go there and think that, okay, or my pastor went through that, like Neil's pain and my pain and Randy's pain and Mark's pain. It's all different. And the Lord might tell you, I'm not going to take it away. Or he'll say, I'll take it away. Or he'll say, share it with someone else. You need to have wisdom in that, be experienced in suffering, not experienced in running away from suffering, which is most what the world does. That's very important. The word process to me is not accurate. It is sometimes, because you have to process, but sometimes you really don't have to. That's very damaging to process certain pains. It's just take the whole thing, flush it, or give it to the Lord, because it could really do a lot of damage. And so what I see a lot in the church is just that people don't know how to handle their pain. And so it just ends up being very destructive. But instead, it's meant to be something that actually really makes us more alive and gives more depth, just like it did with the Lord.
Okay. Well, I was talking with Gavi also about fear, and as Mark says, as Christians, we have idea about pain is something negative, but isn't it all? We can read and see a lot of testimonies about people at the Bible who face the pain and that help all these men of God to grow and to be better. But also that I was thinking about is about fear. And the fear that we as humans, as Christians, we have to the pain. And sometimes that's the deal. We don't want to face the pain because we have fear because fear put us in a position of feel like powerless, right? Like we can have control of some things. And fear, we are talking about trust. And I don't know if fear maybe will be the positive way of trust. And you was talking about manipulation or these kind of things. And all of these are fruits of fear because we want to control, it's just fear. And something that I learned about fear, it's I heard a pastor saying that like fear is like worship the devil, It's like give him power because we are believing his lies. But the fear of the Lord, it's worship to God. Like fear the Lord is that what we need to, I forgot the word. We have interpreters. Poner en su lugar, replace. Something that we can grow, learn, it's to replace our fear, to fear the Lord. And I also read a phrase who said like, if you fear God, you don't have to fear anything else. So I know want to add that.
I have a question. I don't know if anyone else ever feels this way. Maybe it's because I've always felt that God was kind of manipulative, like Mark was kind of talking about earlier. But sometimes when I go through painful processes in my life, I think that God puts me in those. like, oh, I'm going through this really hard, depressing time in my life right now. That must mean that it's time for me to move up to this next level to be with God. That means that He's just working more in me, and that like it's going to be really painful, but I always personally make myself grow in those situations. And so I think that He kind of puts me in those situations anymore. And I don't know if that's like the wrong way to think or feel about that.
Okay, how you doing? I'm Jaime from Costa Rica. English is not my first language, so probably I'm saying something weird. Try to understand me. Okay, I'm gonna talk about something that happened to me some time ago, and was an experience about trusting. And it's not something like I don't really share like too much of my personal life, but I write it down because if not, I will talk a lot. Um, I used to be with this girl from for a long time. Then we finished this relationship, but after that, we continued like seeing each other. We were trying to realize like what didn't work, and trying to make it work. And at the same time, I remember my friend from high school. Like as soon as I got to Costa Rica, like 13 or 14 years ago, I just met this guy, and we became like really close friends. And like during that period of time when when I was done with that relationship, but still trying to make it work, um, this guy just started like walking away from me and my friends with no apparent reason. Like he was okay. I thought like he was busy or something like that. So I will make it like long, but sometime after that, I realized that they were like in a kind of second relationship, you know, and that's like two of my most closer people. Like I really love them, and I realized that at home. I work at home, so I'm a really late night guy. I was at home alone, like uh, I don't know, 2 a.m. or something like that. And at that moment, I realized I knew that was happening, So I realized that everyone, like around me, even in a Christian background, they were kind of aware of that, and they were making like jokes between them about it. Um, I felt like obviously betrayed, you know, but it was so good that I just stopped and I talked to God like, what should I do? You know, this is gonna be painful. So don't do that faces. I'm not sad anymore. So I talked to God and I said, what should I do with this? Mm, it took me about 10 minutes, something like that. And I just said, okay, I know me and I know that I cannot overcome with this pain without you, Lord. You know? So you better take care of that because I won't handle this. It won't be good for me. And probably I'm going to be like messing around with that a little bit. So um, I put my other cheek, you know, like it was like completely uh, insane for my mindset in that moment. Like it doesn't make sense. So I text him. Obviously, he was sleeping. I text him and I sent him like a huge message. Even before he asked for forgiveness or something like that, I offered to him. It's like I started like honor him and to his family. I said, dude, you didn't have idea how I admire you and your family, and how your family is something that I would love to have in my family, you know. And I said that I forgive him, that I love him. So that pain that came from the betraying stuff just lasts for 10 minutes. You know, I was completely out of that pain, completely out of that, you know, like bad feeling of, oh man, you just did this to me, you know. So, um, after that, he obviously in the morning, he texted me back and he asked me to talk to me. He wanted to talk to me. So I went to his place at night. We talked a little bit. And I was in the same position. I make it actually so easy for him. Like he didn't even had to ask for forgiveness because he was like already free. I offered that to him, you know. And at the end of the conversation, I realized that he was trying to understand why she was with me. Like what what were I offering? Was the offering or something like that to her? Like for some reason, you know, the questions like, what, how is your relationship, or what do you do, or what kind of? He was actually asking if we had like sexual relationships, like sex. You know, I said we're not having that, so don't get worried about it. But I wasn't. It didn't make sense for me. Like, why are you asking this? But I just let it go, and I just go home, and that's it. Okay, never mind. This never happened. I love you, man. Bye. And he just asked me one thing at the end, like, can I talk to her so we can just close doors and make it like all clear? So I'm gonna go and talk to her. I said, okay. So that's like the second or third time I trust him. You know, like he just heard me and he's asking me to go into lunch with the girl. Like, you know, like doesn't make sense. But I said, okay, go ahead. So they went for lunch and they were talking, and the thing he was doing was trying to convince her, like, you shouldn't be with this guy, you know, like, obviously I didn't know about it until she just came from that lunch and told me. I suppose, like, look what I just did for you. I just expect like something nicer than that, you know. So I didn't do anything at that moment. I say, okay, never mind, just let it behind. Yeah, I would do anything more. Like I won't talk to him about that topic. Just and I saw him like a few times after that, and I talked to him like normal. Um, and then, well, I realized that he was. Well, she told me that he was messaging her and trying to, you know, like keep pushing on it. And and it was like, what? Man, it was like so hard for me, like to try to overcome this and try to forgive you with this thing, and you're like pushing on it, like no makes sense. But I didn't tell him anything of this, you know. Um, but the nice thing of all of this is not sad at all for me right now, is that I can see him and I don't feel like any anger or pain or hate or something like that. I just felt in that moment that I had to plant that seed, you know, and it was clear that when I plant a seed, I don't have to expect like getting the fruits right in that moment from him, you know. It can comes from somewhere else, but um, I have no wounds on it, you know. I actually make jokes about it sometimes with my friends that know about it. Um, I'm gonna summarize that it didn't make sense at the moment, but trusting pain makes me more willing to trust because I know I can overcome that pain through His love. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Jaime. Good story. I just want to respond really quick to Madison's question. And this is just my personal opinion based upon my experience with the Lord and Scripture. Is I don't think the Lord tests us. I think the Lord allows us to experience things our flesh can't handle, that only the Son inside can handle. And that's painful. But the whole point is to bring forth the Son. Just like Jesus bringing forth the Son, so it is with Madison. And so when we're holding on to flesh, he will cause experiences to take place in our lives that will cause the flesh to be shed by the Son arising to handle the experience he puts us through. It's all about our sonship being brought forth. So it might feel like a test, but the reality is he's just birthing a son.
I think if you struggle with that mindset, then it's kind of hard. I remember talking with a guy. He came to me about an issue that happened in his life several years before, and he's always blamed the Lord for the situation. And he's blamed the Lord not only for the situation, but he blamed the Lord for the decision they made in the situation. And I said, "Here's your problem." I said, "The place for your healing is also the place for your pain. He can't be both." And as long as we hold these things up over, and I mean, life happens. We all get it. People disagree with us. Stuff goes on. People get sick. So forth, so on. But I've found it's, the ones who believe the Lord brought it to them or forcing them to go through this process or, whatever, they're the ones who actually take much longer to get through whatever it is they're going through. So always remember, he's your source for healing. He's not your source for pain. And if there was a discipline the Lord was going to bring in your life, he'd tell you. That's the difference, but I don't, personally, I've just never been a big fan of the idea of saying, well, the Lord has brought this to me. But like Mark said, yeah. Does he allow us to go through those things? Sure. Absolutely. 100%. Because he's with us. Always with us.
I don't think the Lord tests us so much, but I do think the world does. And I think Satan will put things in our path to see if we can get so self-focused that we stop giving. And they're watching, within the family, people need to, I think sometimes even as leaders, the more mature we become, the more we cut ourselves off from that we're too strong. We can't let people know what's going on in our life. And people need to see you cry. If you hurt me, I need to be able to say, you really hurt me, Steve. You didn't remember me. Or, that's just something silly, but we need to be honest and let people know that what they do carries emotional consequences. They need to know that you feel, and they need to see that you can work through it and continue to love them, because the whole world has got this rejection down. They can reject you at the snap of a finger. You can get fired from a job for mentioning the name of Jesus. You can get thrown out of school. You can get all kinds of things. With the spirit that is over this nation. And the only place they're going to see unconditional love is within the family of God. That's it. And if we don't work it through it with our marriages and with our families and continue to go after them, that word for trust in the New Testament is to hope in or to believe for. And so I don't know what that looks like unless I ask the Lord, especially for new people coming into your church or into your fellowship. If you're not asking the Lord, how can I hope in them? How can I believe in them? Show me the picture, because once you get the picture, it doesn't matter how they fail you. It doesn't matter how they hurt you, because you got the picture. You got the picture that the Lord's given you, and then you can hope in, you can believe in what the Lord believes in for them. And then you work through things, and it's just like with your kids. They can disappoint you, they can break your trust, and yet you got the picture.
you know what the Lord sees in them and believes in them for, and then it's easy. But, you know, living an open life, living with your arms wide open to say, yes, Lord, it's not about my stuff, they can have it. I mean, really, it's not about the stuff. It's not what we got. It's what the Lord has planted in us that we can give, that represents him, and that we can share our glory with people, and watching Jesus be magnified through the pain, through the hurt, through the joys, through the births, through the deaths, through the grieving, through just walking so close with you that they see a new image of themselves because of what Christ has done in and through you.
Okay. I just want to share, I know was not here last evening for the trust exercise. And I'm kind of glad that I wasn't, because I've been really struggling with trust. This last week, I realized that I kept putting my trust into one person in particular and feeling like I had been repeatedly let down, to the point where I've been getting incredibly pissed off all the way around. Realizing that out of my expectation of needing them to show up for me in a certain way, and they haven't been, I've been retreating from them. Okay, so I'm retreating from them, which is not just me physically retreating from them, which I've been completely withdrawing my heart from them. To the point where realizing it's filtering into probably a good bit of areas in my life, because that's just how it goes, right? Where I'm not just pissed off at him, her, whatever it is anymore, but I'm pissed off at everybody. I'm pissed at God. And I'm just saying it because I don't want to be. So I'm sitting at Fuddruckers at 12, thinking that's where our lunch was, and was getting pissed at that. Because I'm struggling all together about trust. And Neil and Steve were there, and I had a chance to sit and talk with them, and I'm so glad that I went to Fuddruckers instead of here. Because when Neil looked at me and just said, you know, like, how are you? So Neil, thank you. It just really, I felt like opened my heart back up to relationship, not just relationship in general, but relationship with the Lord, where he was just kind of saying, it's not about the person that you're not trusting, it's about me calling you back up. Like, are you remembering who you are? Because when you remember who you are, it's not about whatever expectancy you have of a person, whether they meet it or not meet it. It's about who you're going to be, regardless of their outcome. Do you know what I mean? And I felt like I needed that relearning or that lesson again today of like, Steve, thank you for reminding me to be not expectant, but be in expectancy. Expectation, to be in expectancy of not just of what they could, like, I don't know how you said it, about being expectancy of what could be or what they can, you know what I mean?